Welcome back to the class, ladies and gentlemen. Today we are going to be taking another great look at the Mauldalorians. This time we're going to be taking on Commander Luke Skywalker and the infamous Rebels. And this one I was really excited to see how they did kind of overall, because the Commander Luke team is a very strong team. We see them consistently beating most other non-Galactic Legends teams, and even under the right circumstances, even Galactic Legends team. So you can see there today, helping me is Fabivs. Valeu, cara, se você está assistindo isso. He's one of my shard mates, great guy, and he has a really well modded CLS. Tons of tenacity on Chewbacca. CLS is modded well as well. 3 fuels got a bunch of potency. Pretty much everything you could want on a normal CLS from a high-end player, he's got it. A ton of just straight offense on Chewbacca. And I believe he also has a really fast Han, which is something fairly desirable. So what we're going to do today is we're going to take out a few different comps, and I wanted to especially try this one multiple times, because a Han shoot first, just as this counter, as in most counters, is completely random. So I really wanted to play around with this several times to make sure that there's not like one specific character that he can shoot that just ends the whole match. Spoiler alert, doesn't end up really being the case. Regardless of whoever he shoots, there's always a chance for you to come out ahead. So we'll get started with this first battle. And one thing I did do when doing this, and we'll get there, I did throw a Zeta on Maul. Finally threw a Zeta on Maul. So this is important. They went for Bo-Katan first, which you think Bo-Katan would be pretty fragile, but she was able to tank all the hits coming in there originally. And now we get to have a full charge on Chewbacca. And this part of the counter is very similar to most CLS counters in general. You have to be able to kill Chewbacca. If you cannot get through Chewbacca in the very beginning, then this whole counter kind of falls apart. That being said, that's really not too hard to do, because this team doesn't have a cleanse, or at least it doesn't have an AoE cleanse, something that can reach Chewbacca. And once you get this team going, Canderous just absolutely, and I mean absolutely, loads them up with debuffs. We saw there Chewbacca had about 10, and there's just really nothing that they can do to compete with that. So once you get him loaded up with those debuffs, you're pretty much golden. And then here's the other big thing. You don't see it a lot in this match, but I've talked about it before, primarily in the gas matchup, that we're able to get damage immunity on a taunter. You won't see it much here, like I said, but there is a match towards the end where we've seen this before with Jango with damage immunity, as well as Ness not really having damage immunity, but hiding behind a protection shell. CLS will just keep shooting at Bam or Bo-Katan or whoever while they're in damage immunity, and they will continually reduce their turn meter so the damage immunity never goes away, and they just get stuck with this invincible taunter. It is really brutal and really solidifies this team as a solid counter that can even be used under geared. Because it doesn't matter what gear level the character is, if they're behind damage immunity and CLS just continually increases their turn meter, they're pretty much screwed. So that was that first battle. Everything went pretty well with them shooting Bo-Katan. I really was interested to see what would happen if they shot Maul. And I am going to go ahead and swap out for Gar Saxon here. That battle went so smooth that I always wonder, can I make this work with Gar? And I don't think the question is necessarily whether Gar works. It's really whether can this team work without Bam. So this one was really interesting. They went right for Maul. And I didn't have the Zeta on it this time. I haven't applied it yet, so we kind of got stuck without that. But the interesting thing here is we did get to go because of Maul's frenzy, and armor is really fast naturally, so she went before their team. And when Maul got called to assist via armor, he got a full 4 stacks. He got a full 4 stacks of his buff. So now we get to just completely throttle Chewbacca. And you'll notice there, and I really was happy I did this. We did not decide to budget our damage and go for someone else. Other really important thing, be careful with the AoEs against this team, especially we don't have someone with damage immunity up like we had before. Like now this team, we just don't have it. Here is the issue though. Without Bam's damage immunity to really safeguard us, we're really at a loss here to be able to survive, because we have to wait until Maul gets back around to his attacks. And the big issue with that is if the blind isn't cleansed off of enough people, they also don't assist and if they assist, we don't heal. So this match actually gets pretty close. If I had better gear, or better relics rather, on all of my characters, like let's say Gar was gear 13, let's say armor was more like relic 3, and let's say Canderous was R7, this would have gone much smoother. We would have had the DPS to kill Nubaka, because it took them a while. Again, with the amount of recovery we have, it took them a while to be able to take us down. So I think, again, this is another counter that has viability without BAM. I just think if you want to use BAM, it really completely changes the amount that this team can do, at least how much they can do under-geared even. So we did lose that one. Again, I think that was more of a byproduct of my being under-geared, because we were really able to hold our own for a good second there. So one thing I did go ahead and do is I went ahead and added the Zeta. I really do like this Zeta overall. I'm really thinking about the Seething Rage one that increases cooldowns as well. I think that can be very important in a lot of battles outside of Lord Vader against JMK Cat. Just being two turn cooldown, that's a lot. That's if you put Rex or Gas or someone behind like that, that's a big help. It also, the one that we just put on doesn't allow him to be stunned. So I just wanted to see what we could do more if he couldn't be stunned in the very beginning. And you'll see this match actually goes even worse than the last, because we don't start with 4 stacks of anguish, and we don't get that whole extra turn on Chewbacca, and we don't have enough to kill him. And this one goes super south, super fast. So like I said, if we had more overall gear on a lot of our characters, I think this would have more of a possibility of winning. But yeah, they just really, if you can't kill Chewbacca, they will just flat out steamroll you. So we'll do one more again with BAM. Again, like I just wanted to test out the overall viability of what BAM can do. And this is where what I was talking about before really came into effect, with the damage immunity causing them to get stuck behind something that they can just not get out from underneath. And that is the damage immunity when they just keep reducing his turn meter. So we'll go ahead and load in BAM here. I don't really think BAM needs to be a full R7, because he's not really here for his damage. He's here for his Zeta. So as long as you have that Zeta, and you have Bo-Katan Zeta for the health and protection recovery, you'll be fine for this team. And I also, just in general, I think the overall value of this team is found primarily in those 2 Zetas. I'm still learning this team as we test it out against some different team comps, but I think realistically, those 2 are by far like the most influential and the most important across everything that we're using here. Far significant than Maul Zeta. It's not saying that Maul Zetas aren't absolutely essential to some counters, or they aren't good in general, but the BAM one is really what keeps things going. So now you'll see it here. So they're stuck behind BAM here, and he currently has tenacity up, so they can't do a lot to him. But they just keep hitting him, and then Silas comes in, drops his tenacity, and drops his turn meter. So now he can lose turn meter because there's no tenacity to bail him out. And CLS and Han both remove turn meter on their basics. So this just goes downhill really fast for the CLS team. There's just nothing they can do about it. I even had a huge misplay of like trying to throw Daze on the team when my armor was blinded. So they just get stuck, and it's really, this is something that we see with other teams, but this is the first time that we've had a character who can have the damage immunity and a consistent taunt where he self-cleanses. 3PO just going down and reducing his turn meter, Han reducing his turn meter, CLS reducing his turn meter, and he just sits there. And that's ultimately, I think, one of the reasons why this team is going to be able to get really, really high banners, just because they stay protected like that. So, again, for myself, I don't see myself using this team on offense, just because this is pretty much 2 entire teams for me. I still have a really solid BAM team, and Maul, even without BAM, is still a really, really great team. But once we do get condensed teams, I will definitely be using this. We'll get to a conclusion video at some point, but I would really consider the Mauldalorians an A- team, which in my classification is just 1 step below Galactic Legend. He's not as good as the Galactic Legend, but he's right below. Same caliber as Gas, same caliber as CLS, obviously. Just a really, really good overall team. So you can see we were able to take all the punches, and then once we get back to 5 stacks of anguish, we just go ahead and full on delete the team. And it's honestly really cool to see even Chewbacca, or rather Newbacca's, isn't able to kill everyone else via AoEs, despite the fact that I have quite a few undergeared characters here. But that is pretty much going to be it for this battle. We'll go ahead and do our normal review as soon as the battle finishes out. We're going to go ahead and just knock CLS on his butt here after he decides to counter us a bunch. And you'll notice we don't even really end up using the Whistling Birds. I mean, we just activated them there, but they don't really make that much of a difference. A lot of people, when they originally saw this counter, they thought that's what was going to be the great thing, because Maul is going to be able to have everyone attack constantly, and that will ultimately build up those birds to a really high amount, but it's really the damage immunity. It's really the damage immunity that makes him just invincible. And there we go. Luke is dead. Nice. Very satisfying to watch. But yeah, so overall, this is a very solid counter. The comp, it is normal. I do think for the most part you need BAM. If the other team isn't modded that well and you have a really good GAR and a really good Mauldalorian team, I think you can still do it without that specific comp. Mechanics are there. Like I said, reducing turn meter on a damage immune taunting tank is really, really problematic. And that also being said, the Zetas in gear, it's pretty easy. You just need Bo-Katans and you need BAMs. Despite what I was thinking beforehand, you don't really need the immune to stun Zeta from Maul. And its overall viability is easy. It's really not that hard to put together. It's really not that hard to pull off. It's a solid counter. Like if you want to build up this team, you want to invest in it to be a reliable CLS counter, it has the Calvin Awesome stamp of approval. So that is going to be it for now. Before the next video, you can catch me on Twitch every Wednesday and Sunday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, as well as on Saturday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's Calvin_Awesome. But until then, stay awesome.